The mahogany double doors of Prescott and Winthrop law offices felt impossibly heavy as Vanessa Hargrove pushed them open, the weight symbolic of the burden she carried. Inside, the air was frigid, and not just from the overzealous air conditioning that wealthy establishments seemed to favor. Heads turned. Whispers started. Vanessa smoothed down her simple black dress, suddenly aware of every wrinkle, every place where the fabric had worn thin over years of use. It was her funeral dress, her interview dress, her trying to be taken seriously dress. Today, it felt woefully inadequate. That's her. A voice hissed, not bothering to lower its volume. The help. I didn't know the cleaning lady warranted an invitation to the will reading. Stifled laughter rippled through the room like a poison. The Blackwell family, draped in designer mourning clothes that probably cost more than Vanessa's monthly rent, occupied the premium leather chairs around an imposing conference table. Diamonds glinted on fingers that covered smirking mouths. Custom-tailored suits shifted as shoulders shook with barely contained derision. Perhaps she's expecting a thank you tip for scrubbing the old man's toilets, another voice added, louder this time. Vanessa's dark skin burned hot with humiliation, but she lifted her chin and walked to the only remaining seat, a stiff wooden chair in the corner, clearly an afterthought. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. She clutched her worn leather bag to her chest like armor. "Let's begin," said Attorney Prescott, adjusting his glasses and looking distinctly uncomfortable. His eyes darted toward Vanessa apologetically before focusing on the thick folder before him. "We are gathered here today for the reading of the last will and testament of Harrison Edmund Blackwell III." The family leaned forward in anticipation. Penelope Blackwell with her surgical enhancements and cold eyes. Her adult children, Tristan and Cordelia, with matching expressions of entitlement. Harrison's brother Richard, whose fingers drummed impatiently on the table, and various cousins and in-laws, all wearing the same hungry expression. "Before I begin with the specific bequests," Attorney Prescott continued, clearing his throat, "Mr. Blackwell insisted that I read a personal statement." He removed a sealed envelope from the folder, broke the wax seal bearing the Blackwell crest, and began to read. "To my family gathered here today, you have waited for this moment for decades, calculating your anticipated windfall behind forced smiles and feigned concern. You surrounded me, but left me in profound loneliness. You counted the value of everything I owned, but recognized the value of nothing I loved. You saw my collections, but never the beauty I treasured. With one exception." Attorney Prescott's eyes flicked up toward Vanessa, whose breath caught in her throat. "The entirety of my estate, including the Blackwell family home, all business holdings, investment portfolios, art collections, and liquid assets." The attorney paused, removing his glasses slowly, his face pale. "What?" Penelope Blackwell demanded, her voice shrill. "What does it say?" The room seemed to shrink as the attorney cleared his throat again. He looked directly at Vanessa, whose heart had started hammering so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. "Is hereby bequeathed to Vanessa Marie Hargrove." The silence lasted precisely 2 seconds before erupting into chaos. Penelope's scream pierced the air like a blade. Tristan leapt to his feet, upending his chair. Cordelia's face contorted with rage. "That black bitch manipulated him," someone shouted. And as the wealthy, privileged Blackwell family dissolved into rage and disbelief, Vanessa sat still, shocked, overwhelmed, and unaware that the true story had only just begun. This is a story about judgment, prejudice, and unexpected justice. If you're joining us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our powerful stories. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments. Now let's go back to see how this all began. 3 months earlier, morning light streamed through the tall windows of Vanessa's studio apartment, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air. Half of the space functioned as her living quarters, a neatly made futon, a compact kitchenette, and a small bookshelf overflowing with art history texts. The other half was her workshop, where she currently stood, bent over a canvas, her steady hands moving with practiced precision. At 34, Vanessa Hargrove had built a modest reputation as one of the city's most skilled art restoration specialists. Her small business, Canvas Revived, survived on word of mouth from museums and collectors who valued her meticulous technique and deep knowledge of period-appropriate materials. Just a touch more, she murmured to herself, applying solvent to a deteriorated section of a 19th-century landscape painting. She wore latex gloves and a magnifying headset, her tight coils of hair wrapped carefully in a satin scarf to prevent any strands from contaminating her work. Hours passed in peaceful concentration before her phone buzzed with a familiar ringtone. Vanessa smiled, carefully setting down her tools before answering. "Papa Hyde," she answered warmly. "I'm elbow-deep in the martial landscape." "My brilliant girl," came the deep, weathered voice of her grandfather. Gilbert Hyde had raised Vanessa since she was 5, after her parents' fatal car accident. At 82, he remained her biggest supporter and the keeper of her family history, still saving beautiful things most folks would throw away. Vanessa laughed, removing her gloves and headset. "That's what you taught me. Beauty deserves a second chance. And don't you forget it," he replied. "I'm making your favorite gumbo tonight. Come by after work." "Wouldn't miss it," Vanessa promised. "I'll bring the cornbread." After hanging up, Vanessa returned to her work, losing herself once again in the careful restoration of faded blues and greens. This painting had been abandoned in an attic for decades, deemed worthless by people who couldn't see past the surface damage. Under her care, it was slowly revealing its original splendor. The afternoon mail delivery interrupted her flow. Stretching her stiff shoulders, Vanessa went to collect the usual assortment of bills and flyers from her mailbox downstairs. Among them was a crisp, cream-colored envelope bearing an embossed return address: Prescott and Winthrop, attorneys at law. Back in her apartment, Vanessa opened the mysterious envelope with growing curiosity. The letter inside was formal and brief. "Dear Ms. Hargrove, on behalf of our client, Mr. Harrison Blackwell, we request your professional services regarding the assessment and potential restoration of several valuable artworks in his private collection. Mr. Blackwell has specifically requested you based on your work with the Chamberlain Gallery exhibition last fall. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to schedule an appointment at the Blackwell residence. The matter is of some urgency due to Mr. Blackwell's health considerations. Sincerely, Edmund Prescott, Esq." Vanessa read the letter twice more, her pulse quickening. The Blackwell family was old money, among the wealthiest in the city. Their private collection was rumored to include masterpieces that had never been displayed publicly. Such a commission could transform her small business overnight. She immediately called the number provided, expecting to reach a secretary. Instead, a gravelly voice answered directly. "Blackwell speaking." Surprised, Vanessa scrambled to sound professional. "Mr. Blackwell, this is Vanessa Hargrove, returning your inquiry about art restoration services." "Ah, Ms. Hargrove." The voice warmed. "Your restoration of the Chamberlain's damaged Wyeth was masterful. Breathe new life into it without imposing modern sensibilities. Rare talent." Vanessa blinked in surprise. Most clients couldn't articulate such specific appreciation. "Thank you, sir. I'd be honored to consult on your collection. Tomorrow, then. 2 o'clock. My driver will send you the address. I look forward to meeting you, Miss Hargrove." The call ended abruptly, leaving Vanessa staring at her phone. Something about the conversation felt oddly intimate, as if Harrison Blackwell had been speaking to a colleague rather than hiring a service provider. That evening at her grandfather's modest home in a historically black neighborhood across town, Vanessa shared the news over steaming bowls of seafood gumbo. "The Blackwells." Papa Hyde's eyebrows rose. "Those folks don't exactly have a reputation for racial enlightenment, Nessa." "It's professional, Papa. I won't be joining their country club," Vanessa teased, though a flutter of apprehension stirred in her stomach. Besides, this could mean real stability for the business. Maybe even hiring an assistant. Her grandfather nodded slowly. "Just remember what I always told you. When you walk into rooms they don't expect you in, walk like you built the building." They finished together, laughing. "Exactly that." He reached across the table to squeeze her hand. You earned this opportunity with your talent. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Vanessa nodded, her excitement tinged with caution. She'd navigated predominantly white spaces her entire career. The fine art world was hardly a bastion of diversity. She had developed her own silent rituals for managing the slights, dressing impeccably, speaking with precision, carrying her credentials like invisible armor. Tomorrow would be no different. As she prepared to leave, her grandfather pressed a small object into her palm, a smooth, polished piece of red jasper. Your grandmother's lucky stone, he explained. She carried it to every interview, every important meeting. Said it kept her spirit strong when folks tried to make her feel small. Vanessa closed her fingers around the warm stone, feeling a connection to the grandmother she'd never met, but whose strength she'd heard about all her life. I'll carry it tomorrow, she promised. The Blackwell estate sprawled across 5 acres of prime real estate, sheltered from the city's bustle by ancient oak trees and an imposing wrought iron gate. Vanessa's rideshare driver whistled low as they approached. Somebody's living large, he commented, slowing at the security checkpoint. Vanessa nodded, her professional portfolio clutched tightly in her lap. She wore a tailored black pantsuit, her most expensive outfit, with her hair pulled back in a sleek, professional bun. The red jasper stone rested in her pocket, occasionally touched for reassurance. At the gate, a uniformed security guard approached, his expression immediately suspicious. Name and purpose, he demanded, not bothering to mask his skeptical once-over of Vanessa and the modest car. Vanessa Hargrove. I have a 2 o'clock appointment with Mr. Blackwell. The guard checked his tablet, frowning. You're not on the list. Please check again. Mr. Blackwell personally arranged this meeting yesterday. The guard's radio crackled. What's the holdup, Jensen? Got a woman claiming to have an appointment. Black female, not on today's sheet. Vanessa's cheeks burned, but she kept her expression neutral, the weight of familiar indignity settling on her shoulders. After several minutes of radio exchanges and phone calls, the gate finally swung open. The guard's parting words hung in the air. Service entrances around back, next time. Her rideshare driver gave her a sympathetic glance as she exited the car. Want me to wait? Just in case. I'll be fine, Vanessa assured him, more confidently than she felt. The main entrance to the mansion featured imposing columns and a massive oak door with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. Before she could reach for it, the door swung open, revealing a thin woman in a housekeeper's uniform who made no attempt to hide her surprise. Oh, I was told to expect a delivery. I'm Vanessa Hargrove. I have an appointment with Mr. Blackwell. The housekeeper's confusion morphed into understanding. You must be here about the cleaning position. HR handles those interviews in the South Wing. No, Vanessa corrected firmly, though her heart sank. I'm an art restoration specialist. Mr. Blackwell requested my services. After an uncomfortable pause, the housekeeper reluctantly ushered her into an opulent foyer dominated by a crystal chandelier and a sweeping staircase. Wait here, please, she instructed, gesturing to a small chair near the entrance, distinctly separated from the plush seating area where visitors would normally be accommodated. As Vanessa waited, she observed a continuous flow of people, all white, being warmly greeted and immediately escorted further into the house. None were subjected to verification calls or made to wait. One woman, dressed in yoga attire, breezed past with a casual, "I'm here to see Penelope," and was waved through with a smile. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. Occasionally, staff members would pass by, giving her curious glances but offering no information. Vanessa remained seated, her back perfectly straight, refusing to show discomfort or check her phone, though several messages had buzzed through from other clients. Just as she was debating whether professional persistence had crossed into personal indignity, a tall, silver-haired man appeared at the top of the staircase. Despite his advanced age and the oxygen tube discreetly running from his nose to a portable tank, he carried himself with unmistakable authority. "Ms. Hargrove," he called down, his voice stronger than expected. "I apologize for the inexcusable wait. It seems my staff failed to properly note your appointment. He descended slowly, waving away a hovering assistant. When he reached her, he extended his hand. Harrison Blackwell, I've been looking forward to meeting you. Vanessa stood, accepting his handshake. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Blackwell. Harrison, please. He gestured toward the main hallway. Shall we discuss my collection? I have several pieces that have been quietly deteriorating while my family argues over their monetary rather than artistic value. As they walked, Harrison's pace deliberately slowed to accommodate his limited stamina. He spoke knowledgeably about art conservation techniques. Vanessa gradually relaxed, responding with equal expertise. The gallery wing of the mansion held treasures that made Vanessa catch her breath. Works by renowned American painters alongside European masters, displayed without the protective barriers of museum settings. This is my pride, Harrison said, stopping before a large canvas showing signs of aging and water damage in one corner. Purchased directly from the artist 50 years ago. Most experts don't even know it exists. Vanessa stepped closer, immediately recognizing the distinctive brushwork. This is an undocumented Buford Delaney, she breathed, naming a prominent black artist whose works had been undervalued for decades before posthumous recognition. The composition, the light treatment, it's unmistakable. Harrison's eyes lit up. Most of my so-called art expert friends mistake it for a lesser work or an imitation. You identified it immediately. His technique was revolutionary, Vanessa explained, carefully examining the damaged areas. The deterioration isn't catastrophic yet, but this piece deserves proper conservation before it worsens. Their conversation flowed naturally as Vanessa assessed several more works, taking notes and photographs with Harrison's permission. Unlike many wealthy collectors, he seemed genuinely interested in preservation rather than just investment value. As their meeting concluded nearly 3 hours later, Harrison walked her back toward the entrance. I'd like to commission you for full restoration of the Delaney to start, and perhaps you could return weekly to assess the other pieces. I'd be honored, Vanessa replied sincerely. The commission fee he mentioned would cover her rent for 3 months. As Harrison opened the front door for her, a courtesy that clearly shocked a passing staff member, a sharp female voice interrupted them. Father, Dr. Westlake has been waiting in your study for 30 minutes. A woman in her 50s approached rapidly, her expression shifting from irritation to cold curiosity as she noticed Vanessa. Penelope, meet Ms. Hargrove. She'll be restoring several pieces from my personal collection, starting with the Delaney. Penelope Blackwell's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched higher. The Delaney? But we discussed waiting until after. My decision is made, Harrison interrupted firmly. Penelope's gaze swept over Vanessa dismissively. Human Resources handles all contractor paperwork. They'll need to run the usual background checks before she can remove any property. Ms. Hargrove is not a contractor. She's an artist I've personally invited to collaborate on preserving my collection, Harrison corrected, a steely edge entering his voice. The Delaney doesn't leave these premises. She'll work in the East Sunroom, which I've instructed Phillips to prepare as a temporary studio. The tension between father and daughter crackled in the air. Vanessa maintained her professional composure, though her discomfort was mounting. I should go, she said quietly. I'll return Monday with my equipment, if that works for you, Harrison. Perfect, he nodded, ignoring his daughter's tight-lipped disapproval. As Vanessa walked toward the waiting car Harrison had insisted on calling for her, she heard Penelope's voice carrying across the driveway. Really? Father, where did you find her? The community college art program? There are proper conservators with actual credentials. She has more genuine knowledge in her fingertip than those auction house sycophants you prefer. Harrison's fading reply came. Not everyone values the same things we do, Penelope. Settled in the back seat of the luxury car, Vanessa exhaled slowly, processing the encounter. The red jasper stone felt heavy in her pocket as she turned it over between her fingers. The commission was extraordinary, but the environment clearly hostile. Yet something about Harrison Blackwell's genuine respect made her determined to return, despite his daughter's thinly veiled contempt. As the car pulled away from the estate, Vanessa's phone rang. It was Papa Hyde. "How'd it go, baby girl? Did you build the building?" Vanessa smiled tiredly. "The foundation, at least. But I've got a feeling I'll need to bring extra bricks next time." By her third week working at the Blackwell estate, Vanessa had established a routine. Every Monday and Thursday, she arrived at precisely 9 a.m., was escorted directly to the east sunroom that now functioned as her restoration studio, and worked undisturbed until late afternoon when Harrison would join her for tea and conversation. The sunroom was perfect for her work. North-facing windows provided consistent indirect light, and the space had been equipped with everything she'd requested: specialized lighting, a custom work table, conservation supplies ordered to her specifications. It was the most professional setup she'd ever worked with, making her tiny apartment studio seem woefully inadequate by comparison. The Delaney painting responded beautifully to her careful ministrations. Each session revealed more of the artist's original brilliance, like coaxing a voice that had been silenced back into song. Harrison seemed to understand the slow, methodical nature of proper restoration, never rushing her or demanding visible progress. What Vanessa hadn't anticipated was the depth of their conversations. Harrison was well-read, thoughtful, and surprisingly progressive for a man of his generation and social standing. He shared stories of meeting artists in their prime, including Delaney himself during a trip to Paris in the 1960s. He wasn't appreciated then, Harrison recalled one afternoon, oxygen tank humming quietly beside his armchair. Critics dismissed him, collectors overlooked him. Their loss was my gain, but the injustice of it troubled me even then. Vanessa nodded, carefully removing discolored varnish from a corner of the canvas. Black artists still face, extraordinary barriers to recognition. Delaney's work was revolutionary, but the art world wasn't ready to acknowledge that from a black man, much like they're not ready to acknowledge expertise from a black woman. Harrison asked pointedly. Vanessa's hands stilled momentarily. She hadn't complained about her treatment by the household staff, which remained coldly professional at best. Harrison sighed. "I've spoken to them repeatedly. Old prejudices die hard in this house. I apologize. I'm here for the art," Vanessa replied diplomatically. "And for these conversations, if I'm honest." Harrison smiled. "As am I. It's refreshing to discuss these pieces with someone who sees beyond their auction estimates." Their mutual appreciation for art became a bridge across differences of race, generation, and social position. Harrison began sharing more personal stories: his disillusionment with the family business he'd built, his passion for collecting works by underappreciated artists, his disappointment in his children's materialistic values. "They're waiting for me to die," he confided one day, matter-of-factly. "Not with particular malice. They're not monsters. But they see my collection as assets to liquidate, this house as real estate to develop. They've never understood that some things have value beyond their price." Vanessa listened compassionately. Despite his wealth and privilege, she recognized a fundamental loneliness in him that resonated with her own occasional isolation in the art world. What neither of them realized was that these private conversations were being observed with growing suspicion by members of the household, particularly by Penelope, who had begun timing her casual appearances to coincide with Vanessa's departures. On a Thursday afternoon in her fourth week, Vanessa was packing her tools when Penelope entered the sunroom, accompanied by her son Tristan, a sharp-featured man in his 30s whose perpetual expression suggested he'd detected an unpleasant odor. "Ms. Hargrove." Penelope's voice dripped with false politeness. "How fortunate to catch you. We were hoping to discuss the timeline for completing your work." Vanessa straightened, professional mask firmly in place. "The Delaney restoration is proceeding on schedule. Conservation isn't a process that can be rushed if you want results that preserve the integrity of the original work." "Yes, well, my father's health is deteriorating," Penelope continued, her eyes cold despite her concerned tone. "His doctors recommend minimizing disruptions and excitement. These twice-weekly sessions seem rather taxing." "Harrison, Mr. Blackwell, sets the schedule himself," Vanessa replied carefully. "I defer to his preferences regarding his collection." Tristan stepped forward, his cologne overpowering in the enclosed space. Let's be direct, shall we? My grandfather is an elderly man with diminished capacity, making questionable decisions about valuable family assets. Your private conversations haven't gone unnoticed. The implication hung heavy in the air. Vanessa felt heat rising to her face, equal parts indignation and humiliation. I am a professional art conservator doing the job I was hired to do, she stated firmly, though her voice threatened to waver. Any conversations with your grandfather are appropriate discussions about art history and conservation techniques. Of course, Penelope smiled thinly. Though it does seem curious that an art restorer from your background would suddenly become my father's chosen confidant, particularly regarding his private collection. My background, Vanessa repeated, the familiar weight of racial prejudice settling heavily on her shoulders. A small-time restorer working out of a converted apartment, with no formal affiliation with major museums or auction houses. Tristan clarified smoothly, though the subtext was unmistakable. Suddenly granted extraordinary access to one of the country's most valuable private collections. You understand our concern. Vanessa carefully placed her final tool in her case, using the moment to compose herself. The red jasper stone pressed against her thigh in her pocket. Walk like you built the building, her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Your concerns are noted, she replied, her voice steady despite the churning in her stomach. However, my contract is with Harrison Blackwell, not the Blackwell family. If he wishes to terminate our arrangement, he can inform me directly. As she gathered her belongings to leave, Penelope's parting shot landed like a physical blow. People talk in the art world, Ms. Hargrove. It would be unfortunate if rumors spread about your methods of securing commissions from vulnerable elderly collectors. The threat was unmistakable. As Vanessa walked through the mansion's ornate hallways toward the exit, eyes of staff members and security guards seemed to follow her with newfound suspicion. The weight of being perceived as an interloper, a manipulator, perhaps even a thief, pressed down on her with each step. Only once safely inside the car Harrison still insisted on providing did Vanessa allow herself to feel the full impact of the confrontation. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her bag. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back fiercely. The ride home from the Blackwell estate felt endless. Vanessa gripped the red jasper stone in her pocket so tightly her knuckles ached. Only when the luxury car pulled up to her modest apartment building did she realize tears were silently streaming down her face. Inside her small studio, surrounded by the tools of her craft and the half-completed personal projects that sustained her artistic soul, Vanessa finally allowed herself to break. The sobs came hard and fast, years of similar experiences crashing over her at once. How many times had she been mistaken for janitorial staff at galleries? How often had her credentials been questioned, while less qualified white colleagues sailed through doors that remained firmly shut to her? When her phone rang 20 minutes later, she nearly ignored it, but her professional instincts won out. Miss Hargrove? This is Phillips, Mr. Blackwell's personal assistant. The voice on the other end sounded concerned. Mr. Blackwell noticed your early departure and asked me to check if you're all right. Vanessa swallowed hard. I'm fine. Just needed to attend to another client matter. Mr. Blackwell would like to speak with you, if you're available. Reluctantly, Vanessa agreed to take the call, quickly composing herself. Vanessa. Harrison's voice was warm but tired. Phillips tells me you left in some distress. Did something happen? For a moment, Vanessa considered the professional answer, a polite deflection, an assurance that all was well. But something about Harrison's genuine concern broke through her practiced facade. Your daughter and grandson made it clear they think I'm manipulating you for access to your collection, she admitted quietly. They threaten my professional reputation. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. I owe you an apology, Harrison finally said, his voice heavy with regret. My family's behavior has been inexcusable. They see threats everywhere as my health declines, particularly from anyone who doesn't look like them or come from their social circle. Perhaps it would be better if I completed the Delaney restoration and ended our arrangement, Vanessa suggested, professional pride warring with self-protection. Is that what you want? Harrison asked directly. Vanessa closed her eyes, considering. The Blackwell collection represented the most significant professional opportunity of her career. More than that, her conversations with Harrison had become unexpectedly meaningful. But at what cost to her dignity? No, she admitted. The work is important, but I won't be disrespected or have my integrity questioned. Nor should you. Harrison agreed firmly. I'll speak with my family. This will not happen again. You have my word. True to his promise, when Vanessa returned the following Monday, the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Staff members were pointedly courteous. Penelope and Tristan were nowhere to be seen. Phillips informed her that they had taken an extended trip to the Hamptons property. Over the following weeks, Vanessa completed the Delaney restoration with spectacular results. The painting's vibrant colors and emotional depth emerged from beneath decades of deterioration, revealing the full brilliance of the artist's vision. Harrison was visibly moved when she unveiled the finished work. You've done more than restore paint and canvas, he told her, his voice thick with emotion. You've restored connection to a moment in time I'd nearly forgotten. Their professional relationship deepened as Harrison asked Vanessa to assess and begin work on other pieces in his collection. Their conversations ranged far beyond art, touching on family histories, social justice, and personal philosophies. During one such conversation, Harrison revealed something unexpected. I wasn't always wealthy, you know, he said, gazing out the sunroom windows at the manicured gardens beyond. My father built this empire from nothing, a ruthless climb that left casualties in its wake. I inherited his business acumen, but not his hardness. He paused, adjusting his oxygen tubes. I had a son before Penelope. Bennett, brilliant boy, kind-hearted, wanted to be a teacher of all things. Harrison smiled at the memory. When he was 20, he fell in love with a young woman his mother and I considered unsuitable. Unsuitable, Vanessa echoed, sensing the weight behind the word. She was black, Harrison stated plainly. Beautiful, intelligent, studying medicine. But this was 1972, and my wife came from old Southern money. The scandal would have been. He trailed off, his expression pained. I'm not proud of what happened next. We threatened to cut him off, financially, emotionally, completely. We thought he'd come to his senses. Harrison's eyes grew distant. Instead, he left, cut all ties himself, changed his name, from what I later learned. We received divorce papers when my wife died 15 years ago. Bennett's name listed as next of kin with an address I didn't recognize. Did you try to find him? Vanessa asked softly. By then, private investigators told me he had died in a workplace accident. I was too late. Harrison looked at her directly. My greatest regret, valuing social standing over my son's happiness. Vanessa absorbed this confession in silence, seeing new depths to Harrison's interest in overlooked black artists, his progressive views that seemed at odds with his generation and social position. Is that why your family resents my presence? She asked carefully. Because I remind them of this history? Harrison shook his head. Penelope barely remembers her brother. She was only 5 when he left. No, their prejudice is their own, I'm afraid. A toxic combination of entitlement and fear. As their sessions continued, Harrison's health visibly declined. Some days their conversations were brief, his energy depleted by the simplest exchanges. Other days brought surprising vigor, with Harrison insisting on showing Vanessa family photographs and artifacts stored away for decades, including several pictures of his estranged son. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Harrison seemed particularly reflective. Do you believe in redemption, Vanessa? He asked, watching her work on a small Dutch landscape painting. I believe restoration is a form of redemption, she replied thoughtfully. Taking something damaged by time or neglect and helping it reclaim its true nature. Harrison nodded slowly. A beautiful perspective. I've been thinking about legacies lately, what we leave behind. Not just possessions, but impact. A natural consideration, Vanessa said gently, recognizing the existential weight that often accompanied declining health. "I've made an important decision," Harrison continued. "One my family won't understand. But I believe it's the right thing to do." Before he could elaborate, Phillips appeared at the doorway, apologetic but insistent. "Your doctor has arrived, sir. He's been waiting 20 minutes. We'll continue this conversation Thursday," Harrison promised as he was helped to his feet. But Thursday's appointment never came. Wednesday evening, Vanessa received an urgent call from Phillips. Harrison had been rushed to the hospital after a severe respiratory episode. By midnight, Harrison Edmund Blackwell III had passed away. Have you ever lost someone who saw your potential when others didn't? Drop a heart in the comments if you know that feeling. Also take a moment to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so. Now back to our story. The Blackwell family didn't notify Vanessa of Harrison's death. She learned about it the next morning from an online news article announcing the passing of the business magnate and philanthropist. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday, a private family ceremony followed by a public memorial service. Sitting in her apartment studio, staring at the article on her phone screen, Vanessa felt a grief that surprised her with its intensity. In just a few months, Harrison had become more than a client. He'd been a mentor, perhaps even a friend. When her phone rang, she hoped irrationally that it might be Phillips with instructions about retrieving her equipment from the sunroom. Instead, it was her grandfather. "I saw the news, baby girl," Papa Hyde said gently. "You doing okay?" "I don't know," Vanessa admitted, her voice catching. "It feels strange to mourn someone I knew professionally for such a short time." "Some souls connect beyond time," her grandfather replied wisely. "Will you attend the service?" Vanessa hesitated. "I'm not sure I'd be welcome." "Since when has that stopped you from being where you ought to be?" Papa Hyde challenged gently. "You respected that man. He valued your work. Paying respects isn't about his family's comfort." After they hung up, Vanessa sat with her thoughts, absently turning the red jasper stone between her fingers. The prospect of facing the Blackwell family's hostility at such a vulnerable moment was daunting. Yet the thought of not saying goodbye to Harrison felt worse. Her decision crystallized the next morning when a courier delivered a small package to her door. Inside was a handwritten note from Phillips. "Miss Hargrove, Mr. Blackwell asked me to deliver this to you in the event of his passing. He also instructed that you be notified of the private family viewing on Saturday at 10 a.m. prior to the public service. I've enclosed the details. With respect, James Phillips." Beneath the note lay a small, exquisitely crafted silver frame containing a photograph of a young Harrison with his arm around a handsome black man in graduation robes, clearly from decades earlier. Vanessa turned the frame over, finding an inscription on the back: "Harrison and Buford Delaney, Paris, 1968. True value transcends market price." The gift settled it. On Saturday morning, Vanessa dressed carefully in a simple but elegant black dress, wrapped her hair in a sophisticated updo, and carried a small bouquet of white lilies. The red jasper stone rested in her pocket, a talisman against the trials ahead. The Blackwell family cemetery occupied a secluded corner of the estate, surrounded by ancient oak trees. As Vanessa approached, she could see a gathering of about 30 people surrounding the gravesite. Heads turned as she walked down the path, whispers following in her wake. Penelope spotted her first, her expression morphing from grief to cold fury in an instant. She broke away from the group, intercepting Vanessa before she could reach the gathering. "How dare you show your face here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low enough that only those nearby could hear. "Haven't you done enough damage?" Vanessa stood her ground. "I'm here to pay my respects to Harrison. He specifically invited me through his assistant." "Phillips has overstepped," Penelope snapped. "This is a family gathering. You are not family." "Mother," a young woman's voice interrupted. Cordelia Blackwell, whom Vanessa had seen but never spoken with, approached with a cautious expression. "Grandfather's service is about to begin. This isn't the time. This woman manipulated your grandfather in his final months," Penelope insisted, her voice rising slightly. "She has no place here." Several more heads turned their way. Vanessa felt the familiar weight of scrutiny, the silent judgment passing through the exclusively white gathering. She was about to retreat when a firm hand touched her elbow. "Ms. Hargrove," Phillips said formally. "Mr. Blackwell left specific instructions that you were to be accommodated at the family service if you wish to attend. Please follow me." Ignoring Penelope's sputtering objections, Phillips guided Vanessa to a seat in the second row, a placement of significance that didn't go unnoticed by the murmuring assembly. As she sat, Vanessa caught sight of the ornate casket, draped with white roses, and felt a fresh wave of grief. The service was dignified but impersonal, a recitation of Harrison's business accomplishments, philanthropic contributions, and social standing. No one mentioned his passion for overlooked artists or his keen eye for beauty beyond monetary value. This wasn't the Harrison Vanessa had known. After the brief ceremony, mourners filed past the casket for final goodbyes. When Vanessa's turn came, she placed her lilies among the extravagant arrangements and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." The weight of those simple words encompassed everything: gratitude for his recognition of her expertise, his respect for her as a Black woman in a space that hadn't welcomed her, his sharing of personal regrets and hopes. As she turned to leave, she found her path blocked by Tristan and a man she recognized as the family attorney, Edmund Prescott. "Ms. Hargrove," Prescott said formally, "a moment of your time, please." They led her to a quiet spot beneath an oak tree, away from the dispersing mourners. Tristan's expression was coldly triumphant. "My grandfather's will reading is scheduled for Monday morning," he informed her. "Your presence is requested." Vanessa blinked in surprise. "I don't understand. Why would I?" "We've been reviewing grandfather's financial records," Tristan interrupted. "There are some irregularities regarding payments to you, significantly over market rate for the services rendered." The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. "Any payments I received were set by Harrison himself," Vanessa replied evenly, though her heart raced. "Every invoice went through proper channels." "Of course," Prescott interjected smoothly. "Nonetheless, your presence is legally required. The reading will be at my office, 10 o'clock Monday." As they walked away, Vanessa heard Tristan mutter, "Should be entertaining, at least." The drive home passed in a blur of anxiety and indignation. What irregularities could they possibly have found? Every transaction had been legitimate, every payment properly documented. Was this just another attempt to intimidate her, or something worse? At home, she called Papa Hyde, explaining the bizarre encounter. "Sounds like they're fishing," he said after listening carefully. "Looking for ways to challenge whatever's in the will. Rich folks' favorite pastime is fighting over inheritance." "But why include me?" Vanessa pressed. "I was just his art restorer." There was a pause before her grandfather asked gently, "Are you sure that's all you were to him, Nessa?" Vanessa considered the intimate conversations, the confidences shared, the photograph gifted posthumously. "We became friends, I think. He trusted me. And that scares them," Papa Hyde concluded. "The unknown threatens those who've always had everything under control." Throughout the weekend, Vanessa vacillated between determination and dread. By Monday morning, she had steeled herself for the worst: accusations, humiliation, perhaps even threats of legal action for imagined impropriety. She dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, carried a folder with copies of all invoices and correspondence, and placed the red jasper stone in her pocket. As her rideshare approached the imposing offices of Prescott and Winthrop, Vanessa took a deep breath and reminded herself, "Walk like you built the building." Anyone else feeling their heart pounding right now? Type "justice" in the comments if you're hoping Vanessa gets what she deserves. Also take a moment to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so. Now let's see what happens at this will reading. The mahogany doors of Prescott and Winthrop felt impossibly heavy as Vanessa pushed through them. Inside the opulent conference room, the assembled Blackwell family fell silent, all eyes turning to assess and dismiss her in the same breath. She recognized most of them from the funeral: Penelope and her children, Tristan and Cordelia, Harrison's younger brother Richard and his wife. various cousins, and in-laws whose names she didn't know. Ms. Hargrove, Attorney Prescott greeted her with professional courtesy. Please have a seat. The only available chair was a stiff wooden one in the corner, clearly separated from the premium leather seats occupied by family members. The symbolism wasn't subtle. Vanessa took her place silently, aware of the whispers and sideways glances. She caught fragments of commentary. The help? And cleaning lady. And invited to the will reading. She maintained her dignity, back straight, expression neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The red jasper stone pressed reassuringly against her thigh through her pocket. Now that everyone is present, Prescott began formally. We will proceed with the reading of the last will and testament of Harrison Edmund Blackwell III. The family leaned forward collectively, the atmosphere charged with anticipation and tension. Prescott removed his glasses, cleared his throat, and began to read. I, Harrison Edmund Blackwell III, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. The legal preamble continued for several minutes before reaching the substance of the document. Prescott paused, seeming to gather himself before continuing. Before I detail the specific bequests, I wish the following statement to be read in its entirety. He removed a sealed envelope from the folder, broke the wax seal bearing the Blackwell crest, and began to read. To my family gathered here today, you have waited for this moment for decades, calculating your anticipated windfall behind forced smiles and feigned concern. You surrounded me, but left me in profound loneliness. You counted the value of everything I owned, but recognized the value of nothing I loved. You saw my collections, but never the beauty I treasured. With one exception, Prescott's eyes flicked briefly toward Vanessa before continuing. In my final months, I had the privilege of working with a gifted art restorer who saw beyond price tags to the true worth of creation. She restored not just paintings, but my faith in genuine human connection. In our conversations, I found honesty, integrity, and respect, qualities sorely lacking in my family circle. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Penelope's face flushed with anger. Tristan sat forward, knuckles white where he gripped the armrests of his chair. Therefore, it is with clear intention and sound judgment that I make the following bequests. Prescott continued reading through a list of minor bequests, charitable donations, small mementos to distant relatives, modest financial gifts to long-term staff members. With each item, the family's tension visibly mounted. When these preliminary matters were concluded, Prescott again paused significantly. The entirety of my estate, including the Blackwell family home, all business holdings, investment portfolios, art collections, and liquid assets. He paused, removing his glasses slowly, his face pale. What? Penelope demanded, her voice shrill. What does it say? The room seemed to shrink as Prescott cleared his throat again. He looked directly at Vanessa, whose heart had started hammering so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. Is hereby bequeathed to Vanessa Marie Hargrove. The silence lasted precisely 2 seconds before erupting into chaos. Penelope's scream pierced the air. Tristan leapt to his feet, appending his chair. Cordelia's face contorted with disbelief. That black bitch manipulated him, someone shouted from the back of the room. This is an outrage. Richard bellowed, his face purpling. My brother was not in his right mind. We'll contest this. Penelope shrieked, pointing an accusatory finger at Vanessa. She coerced a dying man. She seduced him or drugged him or... Silence. Prescott's voice cut through the uproar with unexpected authority. Mr. Blackwell anticipated your reaction precisely, which is why he took extraordinary measures to establish his mental competence and freedom from undue influence. He nodded to his assistant, who wheeled in a television on a cart. Mr. Blackwell recorded a video statement 6 weeks ago, in the presence of 3 independent physicians and 2 attorneys from separate firms. The recording has been sealed until this moment. As the screen flickered to life, the room fell into stunned silence. Harrison Blackwell appeared, seated in his favorite study chair, looking tired but alert. His voice was firm as he spoke directly to the camera. If you're viewing this, I have passed on, and my family is likely throwing a collective tantrum about my testamentary decisions. Let me be perfectly clear. I am of sound mind. I have not been manipulated, coerced, or unduly influenced in any way. My decision to leave my estate to Vanessa Hargrove is made with full awareness and deliberate intention. Harrison shifted slightly in his chair, his expression hardening. For most of my life, I allowed social expectations and family pressure to dictate my choices, with disastrous consequences. I disowned my son Bennett for falling in love with a black woman. I chose family reputation over his happiness. It was the greatest mistake of my life, one I've regretted every day since. Gasps rippled through the room. Vanessa felt a chill run down her spine as Harrison continued. Harrison's recorded image leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense with purpose. What none of you know, what I discovered only recently myself, is that Bennett's child survived him. My granddaughter. The camera pulled back slightly, revealing Phillips standing beside Harrison's chair, holding a framed photograph that Harrison took and displayed for the camera. It showed a young Bennett Blackwell with his arm around a beautiful black woman, both of them beaming at the camera, her visibly pregnant. My private investigators located Bennett's widow 5 years ago, but she passed before I could make contact. Their daughter, however, my granddaughter, has unknowingly been in my life these past months. Harrison smiled directly into the camera. Vanessa Marie Hargrove is my granddaughter, my son Bennett's only child. DNA tests confirming this relationship have been filed with this video. I discovered this connection shortly after hiring her, though she remains unaware of our blood tie as I record this. The room erupted again, all eyes turning to Vanessa, whose world had suddenly tilted on its axis. She gripped the arms of her chair, struggling to process this revelation as Harrison continued speaking. I chose not to tell Vanessa immediately, wanting to know her as a person first, not as an heir. What I discovered was a woman of extraordinary talent, integrity, and compassion, everything a grandfather could hope for in a grandchild. A woman who earned my respect long before I knew she carried my blood. Harrison's expression hardened again. To my family who will undoubtedly challenge this will, I have taken every legal precaution to ensure my wishes stand. Beyond the DNA evidence, I've had psychiatric evaluations documenting my mental competence. Mr. Prescott has affidavits from unbiased witnesses attesting to my clear intention and freedom from coercion. He paused, his gaze seeming to pierce through the screen directly at his assembled relations. More importantly, ask yourselves this. If you had valued me as a person rather than a resource, might things have been different? If you had seen the art I collected for its beauty rather than its price tag, might you have connected with me as Vanessa did? Your inheritance was lost long before this will was written, lost through years of calculating coldness and transparent greed. Harrison's expression softened as he continued. Vanessa, if you're watching this, I hope you can forgive me for not telling you sooner. I wanted to many times. The photograph I asked Phillips to give you after my death was a clue, the first of many I plan to share. I hope you'll use this inheritance to continue your important work preserving beauty in this world. The Blackwell name has been associated with profit for too long. Perhaps through you, it can finally be associated with value of a different kind. The recording ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Vanessa sat perfectly still, tears streaming unchecked down her face. Her mind raced with fragments of memory. Harrison's stories about his estranged son, the shared appreciation for overlooked artists, the conversations that had felt so unexpectedly comfortable. Papa Hyde's words echoed in her ears. Some souls connect beyond time. Attorney Prescott cleared his throat. I have thoroughly reviewed all the documentation. The DNA evidence is conclusive. Ms. Hargrove is indeed Mr. Blackwell's biological granddaughter. Additionally, even if she were not, the will would likely stand on its own merits. Mr. Blackwell's mental competence is well established, and there is no evidence of undue influence. Penelope found her voice first, though it trembled with rage. This is absurd. She must have engineered this, planted evidence, falsified tests. The DNA samples were collected and tested by 3 independent laboratories. Prescott interrupted firmly. The chain of custody is impeccable. Ms. Hargrove herself was unaware of the testing, which used discarded items from her workstation at the Blackwell estate. Tristan turned to Vanessa, his handsome face contorted with hatred. You expect us to believe you had no idea? That this is all some heartwarming coincidence? You worked your way into an old man's life, and that's enough. The voice was Cordelia's, surprisingly steady as she rose from her seat. The youngest of Harrison's acknowledged grandchildren, she had remained largely silent throughout the proceedings. Grandfather's video makes it clear she didn't know. She approached Vanessa slowly, the room watching in tense silence. Is it true? You had no idea? Vanessa found her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. None whatsoever. I was hired for my restoration skills. That's all I ever thought it was. Cordelia studied her face for a long moment before nodding slightly. I believe you. She turned to face her family. And frankly, even if grandfather weren't her biological grandfather, he had every right to leave his estate to whomever he chose. We've hardly been the family he deserved. Traitor, Penelope hissed at her daughter. After everything we've done for you. What have you done, mother, except teach me to value bank accounts over people? Cordelia shot back, years of resentment suddenly surfacing. Grandfather saw through all of us. Perhaps it's time we saw ourselves clearly too. The confrontation might have escalated further, but at that moment, Phillips entered the room carrying a large archival box. Mr. Blackwell instructed me to deliver this to Ms. Hargrove immediately following the will reading, he announced quietly. All eyes followed as he placed the box carefully on the table before Vanessa. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid to find dozens of photographs, letters, and mementos, the documented life of Bennett Blackwell and his wife, Imani. Birth certificates, wedding photos, school records, the history of the family she'd never known she had. At the very top lay a sealed envelope with "For Vanessa" written in Harrison's distinctive handwriting. She opened it with unsteady fingers, aware of the room's hushed attention. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small key. She began to read silently. My dear Vanessa, if you're reading this, you now know what I discovered shortly after our first meeting, that you are the daughter of my beloved son Bennett and his wife Imani. The moment I saw your name on the recommendation from the Chamberlain Gallery, I suspected the connection. Bennett had mentioned in his last letter to me that he and Imani were expecting a daughter they planned to name Vanessa, after Imani's grandmother. I hired you initially to confirm my suspicions, but I quickly came to admire you for your talent, integrity, and passion, qualities that had nothing to do with our shared blood. I'm sorry for not telling you the truth immediately. Selfishly, perhaps, I wanted to know you as a person first, not as an heir with an agenda. In that choice, I repeated my life's pattern of withholding truth out of fear. The enclosed key opens a private vault in my study containing journals I've kept since Bennett left. They tell the story I was too cowardly to share in person, my deep regret, my attempts to locate him, and eventually you. They are yours now, to read or burn as you see fit. I hope you can forgive an old man's manipulations, even those born of love. Know that leaving you my estate is not merely sentimentality or guilt, but recognition of the person most qualified to steward what I valued. You understand the true worth of things beyond their price, a rare quality in this materialistic world. With profound love from the grandfather who found you too late, Harrison. Vanessa folded the letter carefully, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The room remained unnaturally silent, the shock of revelation leaving even the most vociferous family members temporarily speechless. It was Richard, Harrison's brother, who finally broke the tension. He stood slowly, straightening his suit jacket with dignified resignation. The DNA evidence seems conclusive, he said, his aristocratic voice carrying across the room. And my brother's wishes are clear. Our legal team will review the documentation, of course, but I see no productive purpose in prolonging this situation with ugly accusations. He approached Vanessa, extending his hand formally. It appears you are, indeed, a Blackwell. Whatever our personal feelings, Family is family. The gesture, perfunctory though it was, shifted the atmosphere in the room. Several other relatives followed Richard's lead, offering stiff congratulations or simply nodding acknowledgement before filing out. Penelope and Tristan remained rigidly opposed, storming out with threats of further legal action, but their voices lacked conviction in the face of Harrison's thorough preparations. As the room gradually emptied, Vanessa remained seated, the box of family history in her lap, Harrison's letter clutched in her hand. Reality was still catching up to her. She had entered this room as an art restorer being accused of manipulation. She would leave it as the heiress to one of the city's largest fortunes and the granddaughter of a man she had genuinely come to respect. Cordelia was the last family member to leave, pausing beside Vanessa's chair. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "in the past few months, Grandfather was happier than I'd seen him in years. Whatever you did, just being yourself, I suppose, it gave him peace." Then she was gone, leaving only Vanessa and Attorney Prescott in the vast conference room. "Ms. Hargrove," Prescott said gently, "there will be considerable paperwork and legal proceedings in the coming weeks. The transition of assets this substantial is complex, even without the unusual circumstances." Vanessa nodded mutely, still overwhelmed. "However," Prescott continued, "Mr. Blackwell was meticulous in his planning. The estate is yours, unequivocally. Whatever challenges may come, and some almost certainly will, his wishes are legally bulletproof." "Thank you," Vanessa managed. "I need some time to process all of this. Of course, my office has arranged a car for you. When you're ready to discuss next steps, we're at your disposal." Wow, what a turn of events. Did anyone see that coming? Share your thoughts in the comments below if this twist shocked you. And don't forget to subscribe. Let's see how Vanessa handles this life-changing inheritance. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of legal meetings, financial briefings, and adjustment to a reality Vanessa could never have imagined. The Blackwell family splintered in their response, some pursuing aggressive legal challenges that failed in quick succession, others cautiously accepting the new reality, a few even attempting genuine connection with their newfound relative. Throughout it all, Papa Hyde remained Vanessa's anchor, his practical wisdom keeping her grounded as wealth beyond comprehension suddenly became hers to manage. "Money changes addresses, not souls," he reminded her when she worried about losing herself in this new world. "You're still my Nessa who sees beauty where others see broken things." On a crisp autumn morning, Vanessa stood in what had once been Harrison's sunroom, her first workspace in the mansion that was now legally hers. She'd made few changes to the estate yet, taking time to understand its rhythms and requirements before making significant decisions. But this room she had claimed immediately, expanding it into a fully equipped conservation studio where she continued her work, albeit now on pieces she owned rather than ones she was commissioned to restore. The Delaney painting hung prominently on the main wall, its vibrant colors a daily reminder of the connection that had brought her and Harrison together. Beside it now hung a newly framed photograph of Bennett and Imani Hargrove, her parents, their young faces alight with hope and love. Through Harrison's journals and the box of mementos, Vanessa had pieced together the story of her family. Bennett, after being disowned, had changed his surname to Hargrove, Imani's family name, and built a modest life as a high school teacher. When Vanessa was just 4, they had died in what she had always been told was a car accident, but discovered was actually a house fire. Her maternal grandfather, Gilbert Hyde, had raised her with love but limited resources, never knowing the wealth that might have been available had Bennett reconciled with his father. The irony wasn't lost on her. That talent and hard work had led her directly back to the heritage denied by prejudice and pride decades earlier. It felt like the universe had orchestrated an elaborate form of justice, returning to her what should have been her birthright, while simultaneously validating her own independent achievements. A knock at the studio door interrupted her thoughts. Phillips, who had stayed on at her request, entered with a tablet in hand. "The architects have sent the final plans for your approval, Ms. Hargrove." Vanessa smiled. "James, it's been 3 months. Please call me Vanessa." Phillips returned the smile with uncharacteristic warmth. Old habits. The plans are quite impressive. The renovation will transform the East Wing completely. Vanessa took the tablet, reviewing the detailed renderings for what would soon become the Hargrove Institute for Art Conservation, a training center and studio space for promising conservators from underrepresented backgrounds. The institute would offer scholarships, apprenticeships, and eventually certification in techniques that had historically been gate-kept by exclusive institutions. It's perfect, she approved. When can construction begin? The contractors can start next week. And the board of directors you've selected has confirmed their first meeting for Friday. Vanessa nodded, satisfaction warming her chest. The board included respected conservators from various backgrounds, museum directors committed to diversity in the arts, and even Cordelia Blackwell, who had surprised everyone by showing genuine interest in art preservation once freed from her mother's materialistic influence. There's one more thing, Phillips added. Ms. Penelope and Mr. Tristan have requested a meeting. Vanessa's expression tightened slightly. The mother and son had been the most vehemently opposed to her inheritance, pursuing legal challenges and even attempting to plant negative stories about her in the press. Their litigation had failed spectacularly when their own past financial improprieties came to light during discovery. Apparently, they had been quietly siphoning funds from Harrison's accounts for years. Did they say why? Apparently, they wished to reconcile. Vanessa considered this skeptically. More likely, they had exhausted their legal options and financial resources and were now attempting a different approach. Schedule them for next week, she decided. In the main sitting room, not my private quarters. After Phillips departed, Vanessa returned to the conservation project currently occupying her workbench, a small, damaged sketch by an unknown artist that had been found in the attic, deemed worthless by previous appraisers. Under her careful attention, elements of genuine talent were emerging from beneath decades of neglect. It might never be valuable in monetary terms, but its restoration represented everything Vanessa believed about worth and second chances. The following Friday, the inaugural board meeting of the Hargrove Institute convened in what had once been Harrison's formal dining room. Around the table sat distinguished conservators, art historians, and educators, a diverse group representing multiple ethnicities, backgrounds, and approaches to preservation. Thank you all for joining this venture, Vanessa began, looking around at the assembled experts. The mission of the Institute is simple but ambitious: to transform the field of art conservation by opening doors that have historically been closed to many communities. She outlined her vision: scholarships for promising students lacking financial resources, partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities, outreach programs for inner-city schools, and a visiting artist program that would bring world-class conservators to teach specialized techniques. Access to training is only the beginning, she continued. We'll also create pathways to employment, addressing the systemic barriers that prevent diverse voices from entering prestigious institutions. The discussion that followed was energetic and constructive. By meeting's end, the framework for the Institute's first year of operation was solidly established, with classes scheduled to begin in 6 months. As the board members departed, Cordelia lingered behind, examining the Delaney painting with newfound appreciation. You know, she said thoughtfully, I walked past this painting my entire life without really seeing it. Just like I never really saw my grandfather. Vanessa joined her before the artwork. Harrison told me once that truly seeing something requires being willing to look beyond surface value. Cordelia nodded. A lesson my mother never learned. She hesitated before adding, They're coming to see you tomorrow, Mother and Tristan. I should warn you, they're desperate. The legal battles drained their personal accounts, and they've burned bridges with most of the family. What do you think they want? Money, obviously, but they'll wrap it in family obligation and reconciliation. Cordelia's expression turned apologetic. I know they treated you terribly. No one would blame you for turning them away. Vanessa considered this, remembering Harrison's greatest regret, allowing pride and prejudice to separate him from his son until it was too late. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or enabling toxic behavior, but perhaps there was a middle path. Thank you for the warning, she said simply. The next morning, Vanessa prepared carefully for the meeting, choosing an outfit that balanced professionalism with the comfort of one at home in her surroundings. The red jasper stone, her grandmother's lucky talisman, remained in her pocket, a connection to her roots as she navigated this new chapter. Penelope and Tristan arrived precisely on time. Their designer clothes noticeably less extravagant than before, their demeanor carefully modulated to project humble contrition. The performance might have been convincing to someone who hadn't experienced their genuine contempt firsthand. Vanessa, Penelope began, forcing warmth into her voice. Thank you for agreeing to see us. These past months have been a time of reflection. Indeed, Tristan added, his formerly sneering face arranged in an expression of earnest sincerity. We've come to recognize that family must stand together, not apart. Vanessa gestured for them to sit, maintaining a neutral expression. I appreciate you reaching out. How can I help you today? The conversation that followed was a masterclass in manipulation. Hints about financial hardship, reminders of shared blood connections, subtle implications that Harrison would have wanted his daughter and grandson provided for, regardless of past conflicts. When they finally reached their actual request, a modest trust of several $1,000,000 each, Vanessa was prepared. I've given this considerable thought, she said calmly. And I agree that family connections matter. Harrison's greatest regret was allowing prejudice to separate him from his son, my father. I don't wish to perpetuate that cycle of division. Hope flickered in their eyes, quickly disguised. However, Vanessa continued, trust must be earned. I won't be establishing financial trusts, but I am offering something potentially more valuable. She outlined her proposal. Penelope and Tristan could earn positions within the Blackwell Foundation, the philanthropic organization she had established to manage charitable giving from the estate. The roles would come with reasonable salaries and opportunities to rebuild their reputations in society, but would require actual work and adherence to strict ethical guidelines. Any misconduct would result in immediate termination. You're offering us jobs? Tristan asked incredulously, the mask of humility slipping. I'm offering you purpose, Vanessa corrected, and a chance to be part of something meaningful. Harrison believed that true value comes from contribution, not acquisition. Penelope's carefully constructed facade cracked. This is absurd. You inherit billions while offering us entry-level positions? We are Blackwells. As am I, Vanessa reminded her quietly. Though I was raised a Hargrove, taught to earn what I receive and value what can't be purchased. The choice is yours, meaningful work with dignity or continued estrangement. Harrison's mistake was making this an all-or-nothing proposition. I'm offering a middle path. The meeting ended shortly afterward, with Penelope and Tristan departing in barely concealed outrage. Whether they would eventually accept her offer remained to be seen, but Vanessa had maintained both boundaries and an open door, something Harrison might have appreciated. Alone again, Vanessa walked through the grand house that was now undeniably hers. The initial strangeness of inhabiting such opulence had faded, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. This inheritance wasn't just wealth and property. It was an opportunity to create change in a field she loved, to open doors that had been closed to people like her for generations. In her private study, once Harrison's, she unlocked the cabinet containing his journals with the key he had left her. She had been reading them gradually, absorbing the complex man who was her grandfather. Tonight, she opened the earliest volume, from the year Bennett had left the family. Harrison's handwriting filled the pages with anguish and stubborn pride, the words of a man torn between social expectations and paternal love. As she read, Vanessa felt not just the pain of what had been lost, but the possibility of what could now be built, a legacy transforming prejudice into opportunity, exclusion into inclusion. On the desk beside the journal sat a framed photograph, Vanessa as a child with Papa Hyde, their smiling faces radiating love despite modest circumstances. Next to it now stood another frame containing the photograph of Bennett and Imani, creating a visual bridge between her known history and her discovered heritage. The following month, The Hargrove Institute for Art Conservation welcomed its first class of fellows, 20 conservators from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in the field. Vanessa stood at the podium in the converted East Wing, looking out at eager faces filled with the same passion for preservation that had driven her own career. Art conservation is fundamentally an act of respect, she told them. We honor the creator's vision while acknowledging the impact of time. We don't erase history. We preserve it while ensuring its journey continues. She gestured to the Delaney painting, now hung prominently in the Institute's main hall. This work came to me damaged but not diminished. Through careful attention to what matters most, the essence, not just the surface, its true beauty emerged again. That process of respectful restoration applies to more than just art. It applies to justice, to relationships, to healing the damage of prejudice and exclusion. As the fellows applauded, Vanessa felt the weight of the red jasper stone in her pocket, a talisman that had traveled with her from a tiny apartment studio to this moment of transformation. She had walked into rooms they didn't expect her in, and now she was building new rooms where everyone would be welcome. In the audience, Papa Hyde wiped tears from his eyes, pride radiating from his weathered face. Beside him sat Cordelia Blackwell, genuinely engaged in the Institute's mission, and James Phillips, whose quiet support had helped navigate the transition. Even a few other Blackwell relatives had attended, their initial skepticism gradually yielding to respect for Vanessa's vision and leadership. Later that evening, after the celebration concluded, Vanessa returned to the sunroom studio. The space where her journey had begun now represented the future she was creating. A future where talent and passion outweighed prejudice, where damaged beauty could be restored, where unexpected connections could heal generational wounds. She picked up her conservation tools, returning to the small, overlooked sketch that continued to reveal its hidden beauty under her careful attention. Some might question why the heiress to billions still worked with her hands, restoring art piece by piece. But for Vanessa, the answer was simple. This was never about the inheritance. It was about seeing value where others saw only surface, about restoring what had been damaged, about creating pathways for others to follow. In inheriting everything, she had found purpose beyond possession, a chance to transform an estate built on privilege into a foundation for opportunity. The family that had mocked her would never fully understand that this was the greatest inheritance of all. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who needs to hear it. What moment in the story resonated with you most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters in this conversation. And remember, sometimes the people who judge you the most know the least about your true worth. Thank you for joining me, and see you in the next video.